Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Welcome back to another episode of Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I am here with three amazing guests today to answer this question: how do effective leaders balance vision with action? But first, a quick intro with these three ladies that we have the privilege to interview or talk with today, rather. First and foremost, Gail Tolbert, a passionate, results-driven HR leader with over 20 years of experience. She specializes in transforming organizations through innovative HR strategies, executive coaching, and high-impact people operations. She's recognized with the prestigious SHRM Pegasus Award for HR Leadership and Innovation. She's currently serving as a senior professional employee relations consultant for University of Colorado Boulder. Welcome, Gail. Lynn Carnes, author and leadership coach, president and founder of Creative Spirits Unleashed. Lynn is focused on guiding leaders and their teams to success as they learn to embrace pressure, mistakes, and failure while becoming more aware of who they really are. She's an avid water skier and the owner and founder of Mystic Waters, a private tournament water ski lake and leadership center in beautiful Lake Lure, and also one of the very first executive and leadership coaches I personally ever worked with. Lisa Hines. Lisa, a respected voice in leadership development as well, with over 25 years of corporate experience, including leading a 75-person team across the U.S. and Canada at a Fortune 300 construction engineering firm. She has a proven track record of building high-performing teams and spearheading impactful professional development initiatives. Now, as the founder of The Confidence Track, Lisa empowers ambitious, career-driven women to lead with greater confidence, influence, and purpose. Wow, all three of you guys, impressive. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. And I believe, Gail, you won the coin toss. So here's your question. How do effective leaders balance vision with action?
All right. Well, thanks so much, Kyle, again, and it's a pleasure to be on with these wonderful ladies who have very impressive backgrounds. So really excited. So for me, I was thinking about this question, and it's a balance, right? I think that's how I really look at this if I'm going to summarize it in one word. And what I mean by that is, I think when you look at vision, right, the first thing that you're obviously going to do is you're going to define the why. You want to make sure that you have a why that resonates, right, with your team, with all of your stakeholders, and really, I think putting forth why does that vision matter. I think that it's just you want to create that buy-in and motivation from the very get-go, and then making sure that that vision is aligned, right, with everything else going on in the organization. So the values, the mission, the overall strategic goals. So that way there's no confusion, about the direction you guys are headed. And then I think it's really taking that vision and being able to put it into action, right? You really want to be able to put that into action. And so for me, putting it into action means several things. One, you want to make sure that everything in your vision, has an ability to layer down, right, into specific strategies, right? So you want to break it down. And then, I think you have to develop, the roadmaps, and you got to prioritize, and then it becomes really making sure, and it's one of my favorite things in HR to say is, make sure that you have the right team behind you, right? Because I've always said, I love to hire people who are smarter than I am, because I can't do it all. And, you really want the effective strategy. So, and you want the skill sets that those people are supplying to you, that are going to really impact your vision. So, again, I think empowering, engaging the team, building that collaboration. And I think, just helping as the leader, right, to maintain that stickiness and that focus. And I think, be that role model, right, for action and for being able to be flexible, right? I always say that with teams, to be agile, be, ready to be ready to flex and to change on a dime, because things happen in business that way. And I've spent most of my career before coming into higher ed being in growing software companies,
Mhm.
helping them build at a very fast pace. And so you have to be agile,
Yeah.
in that moment.
I love the way you use stickiness in between the two, right? Yeah, I mean, if you think about vision without action, it's kind of just a motivational poster. It's not a whole lot more. There's not a whole lot of anything substantive behind that. All right, I love it.
Yeah,
Thank you so
for sure.
much.
You're
Let's
welcome.
jump over to Lynn. How about you on the same question? How do effective leaders balance vision with action? What would you add?
Well, what I would add, first of all, balance is the key, but thinking about what made leaders decide to be leaders. A lot of times it's control. We like to control and we like to get things done. And we also like to set direction. And setting direction and getting things done are kind of two offsetting things. But if you think about it, what's your perception around what kind of control or who is supposed to have the answers? And this is where I find a lot of the leaders I work with get tripped up because as they want to elevate in the organization, they have a hard time giving up control to get control. So balancing vision and action comes from finding a way to set that direction, which actually is full of uncertainty. Like when we set a vision, we don't know how it's going to go. So here we are, a control person having to like set a direction versus get something checked off the box. When we go to action, we get to check things off the box. But the people who actually know how to make your vision happen are generally the ones on the front lines or those under you, whatever level you are in the organization.
Mhm.
So, what I guide leaders to do is to be the conduit. Your job is to have the picture. It's your team's job to tell you what to do, when to do, how to do, to make that picture come to fruition. And if you can't sort of let that go, then chances are you're going to run around making really bad decisions. I've seen some really bad decisions get made when the leader at the top thinks they're supposed to know how to make things happen. And this is what I call dancing the tightrope. On one side, you're sort of letting go, and on the other side, you're, giving up control. So it's like, what's the balance between those two?
Yeah, and maybe somewhere in there, somehow realizing that often we have more control when we let go of the control that we feel like is so important to us, right?
That is that is precisely it. And I heard a leader say this the other day. If I could just really let my team like stay in the lane and allow them to help me, which
Mhm.
is the DNA of leadership. If you could do it all, you wouldn't have to ask for help.
Yeah,
So if you think about it at its root, leadership is actually asking for help more than it is getting control. So
yeah, I
let them
love
tell
that.
you what to do, when to do, how to do, and your job is to hold that picture and hold it strong.
Yeah, love it, love it. Lisa, bring us home.
Wow.
What can
Okay,
you
I'm
add to that?
I'm third. So you've all said great things. So some of this might be a little bit repeated, but it inspired me to think of some other things too. And it's almost like great leaders require living in two time zones at the same time. So one foot is in the future and one is in the present. And Kyle, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but vision without action is just a dream. But
Yeah.
also, action without vision is really just spinning your wheels. And so, the most effective leaders know how to zoom out, see the bigger picture, but then they can also zoom in and focus on what needs to happen today to move things forward. And they're able to do both of those successfully. So I would say it starts with clarity. You have that clear vision, and that vision becomes a filter when you're making decisions. And when leaders articulate a vision that's not only say it's bold but meaningful, then they give their teams a sense of purpose and direction. But then the real work comes, right? It's translating that vision into something real and concrete. You're not just this futuristic thought that you're talking about, but, and Lynn, I think you mentioned it, that great leaders break the vision down into bite-sized actionable steps that people actually execute. and they communicate consistently, not about what they're doing, but why it matters. And Gail, I think you touched on that as well. And I feel this is where a lot of leaders and organizations miss the boat on truly engaging their people in meaningful work, and also preventing that overwhelm from happening. When they know the why, it's so much easier for them to buy into it and to put their best effort forward versus just, hey, get this done. I need this done by 5 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Nobody really likes to get directives like that, but when those leaders tie together that vision with the action and why it's meaningful and important, I think that's where they become super successful. And, the communication that goes with it is key. And that's when they build something that lasts, including their teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. I had a guy, a guy tell me one time on this topic, talking about the best leaders that can balance vision and action. He said, they don't hang out in someday or drown in the to-do list. They build a damn bridge between the two. Right. And so that's really what you guys are saying, right? And you think about that. So important. Think about maybe in your work, or maybe you, if it's happened to you, when plans hit a wall, like we're working strategy towards a vision, how do we adapt without losing momentum or the clarity of that purpose or that why? So think about that in the context of maybe how you've helped others or seen others, or even how you've moved through that.
Can I pick up on something I heard Lisa say? Because I thought this was really.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Lisa mentioned step by step. And what I have found is if you find that you've hit the wall, it's usually because you're gulping and trying to get too much done. And if you can take that step and break it even into smaller steps, that's how you make the impossible happen. So if it looks impossible, it's probably because you've smuggled together 15 steps. Make it 30 steps, right? Like break it down into the smallest piece. And Lisa, you reminded me of that. That's such a critical piece for leaders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would add to that. I would say that it's, also that's your perfect opportunity. In addition to doing that, is to go back and reflect and remember the why. Right? It's always when we hit a wall, like sometimes we get so tied down in the weeds that we forget again why we're doing what we're doing, and what our goal was. And so it's always a really good good opportunity to go back, and look at the why, refresh and energize your mind about why you're there. And then I think it's also important to celebrate the mini milestones, of how far you've come from the beginning. Sometimes, again, we forget that too, right? Because we're so focused on the finish line that we forget all the great things we've done right up to that moment where we hit the wall. So I think, those two things for me, I think when I've seen teams or my own teams hit that challenge, that's where I go to.
Yeah, I like it. Lisa, what would you add?
I would add sometimes it's worth putting it in reverse and going back just a bit to find out, why did we hit the wall? Why are we at this? Like, why are we having a block? What caused that? Because if you don't try to figure that out, you might keep hitting that wall because you don't remove the wall, right? Do we have the wrong people in the room? Do we have too many people in the room? Are people just getting burnt out? Do we need to, make adjustments? And so sometimes, kind of like you mentioned, Gil, we're so focused on the finish line, we don't always stop and just reverse just a bit to see, okay, did we make a mistake somewhere? Or do we need to pivot somehow so that we can continue to move?
Oh, exactly. And sometimes it's because new information has come to light, or, something new has entered the equation. And that can cause your team to hit a wall because they weren't expecting that, in that moment. So I do think like it is important. I love what you said, Lisa, to, put it in reverse a little bit and say, hey, where, are we good? Like, again, do we need to break it into smaller steps? Do we have the right people in the room? Do we let's go back and revisit our process again, because in light of this new information, we may need to be agile, flexible, and we may need to make a few changes in order to move ahead.
Yeah. And how about the high fives for hitting the wall? You know, so we start to zoom in and we're focusing on all these steps that we think are going to get us there, but then we hit it. Instead of banging our head against it, let's say, hey, okay, now we're here. Let's see what this obstacle is. And instead of zooming in, we need to zoom out. Right. And I think that speaks to both what you and Gail were saying, Lisa, is to really step back from it and say, hey, let's do some experimentation here and figure out what's going on so we can just determine how many more steps we need to add, Lynn, to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wall might prevent you from continuing down the wrong track too, right?
Right.
That,
Never know.
exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
what's underneath everything that you all are saying is the ability to let mistakes roll off your back like water off a duck. It is not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of what does and doesn't work. So just keep moving, because if you're doing something new, you better be making mistakes. Otherwise you're doing the same thing you've always done.
Yeah, it's a reflection of hard work, right? Like if you're doing the hard work, you know, you're going to make mistakes, right? And you know, I think the biggest challenge I see in cultures is they, instead of celebrating, you know, those moments, they, you know, tend to admonish those moments. And that's not going to keep creativity and innovation and excitement in a team who is encouraged to do that so that they can move forward.
Yeah. I love it. All right, ladies, like water off a duck's back. Great conversation around balancing vision with action. That's all the time we have. We appreciate you ladies joining us today. Be sure to check us out on LinkedIn and on YouTube with new episodes dropping every week at noon. Thanks again. Take care. Well, that's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.